So Dhammadiva is in China this week on a field trip, this week and next. So we're trying to help her out. We're holding up the fort, so to speak. She'll be back, I believe, Dana, you might be able to tell me, on the 26th for regular Sounds of Dhamma, Sunday Sounds. And the 26th? Back on the 21st, okay. Of May, yeah. A week from now. Okay, great. And then she's back to the vihara at the end of June. So she's going back to the Kortad for the last Hara, and then back at the vihara in end of June. That would be the end of her year abroad. Although it's not really abroad because she's been here the whole time. So, yeah. So I just want to share with you, for people who don't know who I am. I'm a teacher, a Dharma teacher, but a very young one. I'm not exactly a baby, but maybe like a small toddler. I've been teaching since 2020, 21. I think that's when I did my first classes. So it will be a lot different than Dhammadipa's class. So maybe just to say, like, mostly what I teach is I teach in the jail here in Washington, D.C. I live in Washington, D.C. I have 2 classes at the jail and one in a halfway house, ladies coming out of jail with substance abuse. So that's kind of my tradition is Thich Nhat Hanh's Plum Village tradition. He's a Zen Buddhist master, so a little different. But I met Ayya Dhammadipa a couple of years ago and fell in love, probably like everyone else here, both with her and her teachings, and have been very devoted to following her teachings ever since. So I think for the beginning of the meditation, I will do what I like to do with my students, which is to invite you to listen to 3 sounds of the bell, and 3 sounds of the bell with a long pause in between to allow us to settle back. It's called coming home. So listening to the sound of the bell, and using that as a cue to settle back into our bodies and come into the present moment. So we'll settle in for about 10 minutes of meditation now. So getting a little bit centered, maybe moving your attention into the full body from the head to the toe, and noticing where it is in space, in the room that you're in, or the whatever other space you're in. Just aware. And it can be nice to consciously inhale a few times. Maybe as you're inhaling and exhaling, inviting a sense of gratitude. And on your inhales, notice that cool air as it passes through your nostrils and hits the back of your throat. And on exhales, you can consciously release your shoulders a little bit, letting go. Maybe to help the mind slow down a little, move your attention to some places on your head, like your scalp. Just moving your attention there and feeling into your scalp and your hair, or your hair follicles. Noticing your skull. Notice your ears, the outsides, the insides. And any sounds your ears might be in contact with. your forehead, eyebrows. Notice your eyes, the muscles around the eyes, and release whenever you can. Notice the tears in the eyes. The cheeks. Your lips and teeth and tongue. Letting the tongue rest on the floor of the mouth. And bringing the hint of a smile inside of your mouth. As you do that, noticing how it feels elsewhere. I'm going to go right into a talk. I'm not yet comfortable with chanting, so forgive me. Well, this week I went to pick up my other son from college. I have 2 boys. And I noticed my body is in a lot of pain from the drive. It's 8 hours each way, so it's a little bit uncomfortable. And while that was unwelcome, it was actually a little bit welcome, because lately I've been preoccupied with death. And the reason being is that my sister-in-law has ovarian cancer, and I'm very close with her. And a cousin of mine, who I'm not close with, but I just saw this weekend in Boston, she has uterine cancer. That's another bad one. And then our neighbor across the street, who I'm not great friends with, but we see him all the time and always have a kind word for him. He just found out he has lung cancer, and it's the last stage of lung cancer. So suddenly my reality is full of these very difficult diagnoses. So I find myself, I have a phenomena. I wake up, I have a dorve every night. Usually I wake up for a couple of hours, and it's become very sweet. I usually meditate and then practice metta and then go back to sleep. And I have a window into what's really going on in my life. And I've been spending a tremendous amount of time with the contemplation of death, and quite frankly, a lot of fear, which is surprising. I thought I had it all figured out, but and so I wanted to so I've been reading a lot about it, and I wanted to just share some things that I've read and some thoughts on it, knowing that it's very much a project in process. It's very much something I'm very much in the middle of this. So the first place I looked was a great book you may have read called The 5 Invitations by Frank Ostaseski. It's a phenomenal read. He's a I think they call it like a death doula, or he's somebody who really works closely with people in hospice. And Frank has a great definition, or a great understanding that I want to read to you here. So Frank writes, "Death is not waiting for us at the end of a long road. Death is always with us in the marrow of every passing moment. She is the secret teacher hiding in plain sight, helping us to discover what matters most. Life and death are a package deal. They cannot be pulled apart, and we cannot truly live unless we're aware of death. Maintaining an ever-present consciousness of death can bring us closer to our truest selves." Maintaining an ever-present consciousness of death can bring us closer to our truest selves. So maybe this is a good thing. What's going on here? Just reflecting on it, our society is always guiding us to avoidance. It's like the stream it's the river that we're swimming in. Like the cultural norm is really, we do things that we're going to avoid it, or we're going to hide it. Buddha spoke of aging, sickness, and death very bluntly at the very beginning. But the world that I walk around in is the opposite. And some examples that come to my mind right away are institutionalized elder care. Like it's just a big thing. It's packing away people so that we don't have to see or be inconvenienced by. Longevity medicines, I've read about them in the Wall Street Journal recently. There's a new medicine out that even young people are taking that promise an incredibly long life. I don't know more about it, but that I've forgotten about it because it's ridiculous. Even anti-aging creams and like hair dye. Like I'm starting to get gray hair, and I'm sort of, I'm kind of asking myself when I look in the mirror, I'm like, oh, maybe maybe I'll be dyeing my hair soon, which is normal, and a lot of my mom did. People do that. It's totally okay and normal. But it's also, it's just covering over the reality. It's just not cool to talk about death. So I'm really grateful. I'm just taking a huge assumption here that y'all are fine with this, so I appreciate it. Yeah. So a couple of weeks ago, I had this insight that, so when I went to college twice. The first time I went for a Russian degree, and I was younger. It was a little stressful, and I pretty much, like every paper I had to write or every exam I had to study for, I just dove in and I just swam and tried to keep my head above water. And I usually did okay, but it was a ridiculously stressful experience. But I made it through. Went back to college the second time for the degree that I really wanted. And, with that maturity, I was able to look at each project with the end goal in mind. So I would be like, okay, so I have to do this paper or this presentation, and what's my goal? What's the end product that I'm looking for? And it allowed me to sort of be really efficient as I was working up to it. It allowed me to drop away anything that was irrelevant to the end goal. Whereas the first time around, I didn't have that focus, right? There was a lot of extra garbage involved that eventually did fall away, but in the second go round, I was able to frame it up a little bit differently. And so a couple of weeks ago, it occurred to me that is actually a very skillful way to engage with life, in the sense that, this is our life, and it's the physical manifestation of it is finite. The physical manifestation of it is finite. And so we can work towards the good, the thing that we want most at that very important moment at the end. And my husband calls this the eulogy values. He calls them eulogy values, those things that we wish people to remember us for. So again, this, so far, okay, this is sort of helpful, but I went to find some comfort in Thich Nhat Hanh, who's the first teacher that I was exposed to and has been one of my main go-tos in times of personal questioning. And there's a great book he wrote. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's No Death, No Fear. Yeah. And Comforting Wisdom for Life. So, he talks about this idea that the body is a physical manifestation that is subject to arising and passing away. It's subject to anicca, impermanence of all phenomena. The body is included. And the way that Thich Nhat Hanh talks about it, there's two ways that he talks about it that I find very helpful. The one is looking at our physical manifestation as a wave on the ocean. So the ocean is a big body of water that then has a wave that rises up, and it has a beginning, it has a middle, and it has an end. And he talks about that in terms of our physical manifestation as a way to help us to understand that when the wave crests and then quote unquote disappears, it's just that the water has connected back to the ocean. It's not that it's not there. Similarly, he talks about, I love this one, he talks about drinking tea. And so you drink your tea and you've turned on the faucet to get the water, and the tea has come, or the water has come from the river. And the river has filled up because the rain has fallen down. And the rain has come from a cloud that was up in the sky. And so when you're drinking your tea, you can look up at the cloud and know that you're actually just drinking a cloud. And I find that somehow very comforting. I'll read something from No Death, No Fear now, because he describes it so beautifully. And for me, I'm very much, I probably shouldn't even be teaching this subject, but I figured you would be there with me, so I thought I would bring it up. So he writes in No Death, No Fear, he writes, "Nothing is born, nothing dies." A French scientist whose name is Lavoisier declared, I'm not going to read it in French, it's hard to pronounce, "Nothing is born, nothing dies." Although he did not practice as a Buddhist, the scientist, but as a scientist, he found the same truth that the Buddha discovered. Our true nature is the nature of no birth and no death. Only when we touch our true nature can we transcend the fear of non-being and the fear of annihilation. The Buddha said that when conditions are sufficient, something manifests, and we say that it exists. When one or two conditions fail, and the thing does not manifest in the same way, we then say it does not exist. According to the Buddha, to qualify something as existing or not existing is wrong. In reality, there's no such thing as totally existing or totally not existing. And this example is just lovely. We can see this very easily with television and radio. We may be in a room that has no television or radio. And while we're in that room, we may think that television programs and radio programs do not exist in that room. But all of us know that the space in the room is full of signals. The signals of these programs are filling the air everywhere. We only need one more condition, a radio or a television set, and many forms, colors, and sounds will appear. It would have been wrong to say that the signals do not exist because we did not have a radio or television to receive and manifest them. They only seem to not exist because the causes and conditions were not enough to make the television program manifest. So at that moment, in that room, we say they do not exist. Just because we do not perceive something, it is not correct to say that it does not exist. It's only our notion of being and non-being that makes us confused. It's our notion of being and non-being that makes us think something exists or doesn't exist. And there's somehow, I find that very comforting. I don't know why. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. but it starts to shed light on something, on our project. So we're familiar, the only thing we're familiar with is this physical manifestation. Like, it's kind of, for me, it's all I have to go on right now. It's our project. And so I reflect on the things I can and cannot control. And what I know I cannot control are the physical, the worldly conditions. Right? If I were to get cancer myself, that would be very much out of my control. But what we can contemplate, what we can move towards, is the spiritual conditions that we yearn for. And, in my thinking, I think about the project. What mental state is it that I yearn for at that really important time of my life? At my own death, what do I yearn for then? And how can I manifest that? How can I live my life so that that is available to me at that time? Maybe it isn't. Maybe I'll have done all this effort for nothing. But it seems like a very worthy endeavor. And it just so happened I ran into an acquaintance, and somehow we got to talking about death. Don't ask me why it's so much on everyone's mind right now, or maybe it's just me. And he said he had just heard a scientist from his university who had just published some research and the way to live a really good life. He was researching human beings and finding out who was able to live a really good life and be happy. And one thing that the researchers did, one exercise that they did with people that found that showed an increase in happiness with life as it's happening now, is to do two things. So first is to write a list of 3 things that would make you happy about your own death. So reflecting on that, what would that be? What would make me happy? And then number 2, what are 3 things that you can do every week or every day to that end? I find that very compelling because, first of all, I don't know what's going to make me happy about my death, but if you actually dig deeper, there are things that you can identify. If you allow the thought process to go there. And then it informs your life, it informs how you live now, and it allows you to observe mission creep in your day-to-day activities and the things that you're engaging with in your actions. And it allows you to see better right action, and I think that's really valuable. And Thich Nhat Hanh would probably argue that it's a way to help you really appreciate the present moment and to know that the present moment is a most wonderful moment. It's the one moment that you're alive. And so reflecting on death, as I know his monks and nuns do every day. Every day they recite the 5 remembrances. Basically, sickness, aging, and death is a reality. So we have more than enough conditions for happiness right now, and this contemplation, this looking at death in the face, bravely, boldly, without fear, is really a tremendous way to feel more alive and to feel happier. Honestly, not to be cliche, but there's something to it. So I think I'll leave it at that. And just would like to invite your comments or your thoughts or your reflections